In a land untouched by time, far beyond the borders of known kingdoms, ancient valleys trembled under the weight of secrets long buried. Towering trees, as old as the world itself, groaned with the stories they held. A riderless horse galloped through the thick grass, its hooves pounding like a heartbeat. A boy, barely old enough to wear the armor he bore, clung to the reins. Behind him, a girl with fading strength held tight, her breath shallow, her eyes distant, searching for a vision she had seen only in dreams, a place of light where the darkness couldn't reach. The darkness, known only as the void fire, was not just a storm, but a living force, a hungry beast that devoured everything in its path. Forests, mountains, entire kingdoms. It consumed not just the land, but the hope of the people who once thrived there. And always, at the head of this terrible force, rode the one who had created it. A cloaked figure, relentless in his pursuit, chasing a destiny bound to destruction. "Owen," the girl whispered, her voice fragile as the last leaf clinging to a winter tree. Owen, the boy who had once been a street urchin, now carried the weight of a warrior's duty, though the armor felt like a prison, and the sword at his side more burden than protection. He glanced back at Isolde, her once fair face now marred by the blackened curse spreading from her arm. Her blue eyes, once full of life, now dimmed with every passing moment. "Hold on, Isolde," Owen urged, spurring the horse forward as it leaped over a bubbling brook, the water hissing as the void fire approached from behind, turning the stream to steam. They raced against the dying light, the day fading unnaturally fast, as though the very world was bowing to the coming darkness. Isolde's visions had led them here, to this forgotten place where the hills met the sky and the river wound its way through jagged rocks. The cure she spoke of lay somewhere within these wilds, where light still dared to exist. "This is it," she breathed, as Owen laid her gently against the gnarled roots of a tree at the river's edge. Her finger pointed toward the hills where the river seemed to disappear into the dense, dark woods. "Are you certain?" Owen asked, his voice betraying the fear he could no longer hide. Isolde nodded weakly, her gaze drifting to the water, which shimmered with an otherworldly light. Owen noticed how the river glowed, a faint, almost invisible light tracing the edges of each ripple. Owen helped Isolde drink from his cupped hands, but the water brought her no relief. The cursed wound on her arm pulsed, the dark magic within it growing stronger with every moment they lingered. Owen cursed the sorcerer who had done this to them, who had torn them from their life and set them on this desperate path. "We can't stay here," Owen muttered, though his own exhaustion weighed on him like a heavy cloak. The void fire was coming, a storm unlike any other, and it was hungry for them. Isolde nestled closer, finding comfort in the warmth of Owen's presence. They had been through so much together, once just children surviving on scraps in a world that had forgotten them. Now, they were the last hope in a world that had turned to darkness. "We must go," Owen repeated, though he knew the journey ahead would test every ounce of his strength. The climb was treacherous, the steep slopes unforgiving as they pushed higher into the mountains. Owen's hands bled from gripping jagged rocks, his muscles ached under the weight of his armor and Isolde's frail form. But he would not let her go, not after everything they had faced together. The void fire raged behind them, consuming all in its path. The sorcerer was close. Owen could feel it, a cold presence at the edge of his consciousness, a shadow that whispered of doom. But there, at the top of the slope, was a clearing bathed in eerie blue light. At the center, a small, dark passageway beckoned, the river's source hidden within. "Through there," Isolde whispered, her voice barely audible. Owen hesitated, the glowing entrance filling him with dread. But there was no other choice. With a final burst of strength, he lifted Isolde and carried her through the narrow passage, the light growing brighter as they moved forward. Inside, the cave was filled with a luminescent glow, the water beneath their feet shimmering with an ethereal light. It was as if they had stepped into another world, one untouched by the darkness outside. Isolde, though weak, seemed drawn to the light, her blackened hand tracing the walls as if seeking something only she could see. They emerged into a chamber high above the world, the land stretching out far below them. The light here was blinding, a pillar of pure energy rising from the center of a deep crater. Owen shielded his eyes, but Isolde stepped forward, as if pulled by an invisible force. "Owen, it's here," she said, her voice filled with a strange calm. "This is the place." Before he could respond, a voice echoed behind them, deep and filled with fury. "Stop!" The sorcerer, Arteron, had arrived, his cloak billowing as he approached, sword drawn. His face was gaunt, his eyes burning with a madness that only power could bring. "You think you can outrun the void fire?" Arteron sneered. "It is bound to her, boy. The darkness will follow her wherever she goes. There is no escape, no cure. She must die for the world to be saved." Owen's heart pounded in his chest. He drew his sword, but before he could react, Arteron struck him down with a blast of dark magic, sending him crashing against the cave wall. Isolde cried out, but her strength was gone. Arteron approached her, sword raised to strike the final blow. But then, the light in the crater surged, blinding and powerful. Arteron froze, his eyes wide with disbelief. The ground trembled, and a great burst of water erupted from the crater, tearing through the cave, sweeping Arteron away with its force. The water rose into the sky, forming a barrier against the advancing void fire. Owen crawled to Isolde, who lay on the ground, her breath shallow. The curse on her arm began to fade, the blackened skin returning to its natural color as the light filled the chamber. "It's over," Owen whispered, cradling her in his arms. Isolde opened her eyes, now clear and bright. "The light. It was the cure," she murmured, a smile playing on her lips. Together they watched as the water held back the void fire, the dark flames extinguished by the pure, cleansing light. The world outside was still and peaceful once more, the darkness banished, if only for a time. Owen held Isolde close as they stood at the edge of the world, the sun breaking through the clouds, casting the land in a golden light. The curse was gone, but their journey was not over. They would rebuild, together, in this land where light had triumphed over darkness, and hope had found a way to survive. In the heart of the whispering woods, where the trees spoke in hushed tones and moonlight painted the world in silver shades, lived a girl named Alara. This was no normal child, for her tresses shimmered like stardust, and her eyes gleamed with the light of 1,000 secrets. Yet, beneath that delicate beauty lay a mind sharpened by the loneliness of her peculiar existence. She was the only child of the forest abandoned as a baby, reared by the spirits of the woods, who taught her the language of the trees, the songs of the wind, and the whispers of the night. One evening, as the twilight deepened into velvet night, Alara strayed farther than ever before. The air was thick with the scent of earth and mystery, while the shadows seemed to call her onward. Soon, she chanced upon a glade awash in moonlight, where one lone seat of curled roots sat. Seated on it was a boy no older than herself, all with hair bright as gold at dawn. His eyes, however, were cavities empty, as if the fire within had been thieved. His lips now curled into a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "You've come at last," he said. His voice was an echoing melancholy of forgotten dreams. Alara felt a shiver run down her spine, yet she stood her ground. "Who are you?" "I am the prince of the forgotten realm," he replied in a sad tone of voice. "Doomed to rule a kingdom that no longer exists, stuck between the worlds of the living and those of the dead." Alara's heart bled for him, but somehow there was something dangerous that managed to creep into her from his words. "Why am I here?" "Because you are the key to breaking the curse," he said, arising from his throne and stepping closer. "But the choice is yours. If you free me, you must take my place, ruling a land of shadows and lost souls. If you refuse, I will remain, and you shall be free to live your life as you wish." Alara's indecision weighed heavy on her. She had barely opened her mouth to speak when the rustling sound of leaves drew her attention, and a figure emerged from the darkness. The woman had raven-black hair, her eyes blazed with fire that seemed to burn everything that crossed its path. "She lies," the woman spat, her voice cold as a razor. "The prince is not a victim of a curse, but the originator of it. He lures children to this place to steal their souls, to feed the darkness within him." Alara looked from one to the other, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" she asked the woman. "I am Celine, the last of the forest witches," she replied, her gaze never leaving the prince. "I have come to end this madness, once and for all." The prince's smile vanished, and a look of fear fluttered within his empty eyes. "Do not listen to her. She is trying to destroy me, to take the throne for herself." She stepped then forward, extending one hand to Alara. "Come with me, child. Together we may best him and break the curse that holds this forest. Or stay and join the others who have passed before you." Alara's thoughts were racing. The sad eyes of the prince, the tragic story, spoke of a lost soul that needed saving. Yet there was something more to it, something hidden in the fierce determination of Celine and the warning enclosed in her tone. Finally, Alara made her choice. She stepped away from the prince and clasped hands with Celine. "I choose freedom." A mighty roar of rage escaped the prince's lips as the world around them began to collapse. Trees twisted and darkened, and their throne of roots disintegrated into dust. Yet still Celine held her place, her power growing with each surge of darkness. She waved her hand, and the prince vanished into the night, his form dissolving up into the treetops. The glade was silent for a moment, and the heavy sense of persecution weighing upon the forest was gone. "You have done well, Elara," Selene said quietly, the fire in her eyes now warm with gentle consideration. "The curse is broken, and the whispering forest is free once again." Elara merely nodded, sudden strange relief and sadness swirling together inside her. "What now?" Celine replied, "You to your life, and me to stay here keeping this woods safe." But she added, "Remember that you are never alone. The wood's spirits will look out for you whenever." Smiling, light-hearted for the first time in ages, Elara turned and began to walk back into the forest, leaving the glade behind her. And as she vanished amidst the trees, the whispers of the forest sang a song of release and beginning, an echoing rhythm within Elara's heart forever. I remember nothing of my past before the moment I awoke to the sound of roaring applause and the searing pain of a broken rib. The dust settled around me as I lay sprawled in the center of an arena, staring up at a sky that was both familiar and entirely alien. The scent of earth and sweat filled my nostrils, and as I struggled to catch my breath, a rough hand grabbed mine, pulling me to my feet. "Great ride, Caleb. You almost had him that time," a grizzled man shouted over the din, slapping me hard on the back. Caleb. The name echoed hollowly in my mind, mismatched and wrong. I looked down at my hands, calloused, large, and definitely not mine. Panic surged through me, but before I could process the flood of confusion, a sharp pain shot through my side, stealing my breath once more. "Medic!" someone yelled, and the world around me blurred into a haze of colors and sounds as I was guided off the arena floor. That was 3 months ago. Now, sitting on the worn steps of my trailer, I gaze out over the quiet expanse of the Nevada desert, the twilight casting long shadows across the barren landscape. The evening air is cool, a welcome relief from the day's relentless heat. In my hands, I hold a steaming mug of coffee, hoping its warmth will soothe the unease that never truly leaves me. Life as Caleb McAllister has been a whirlwind of rodeos, late-night bar fights, and endless miles on dusty highways. It's a life I never would have imagined for myself, or rather, for the woman I once was. Memories of my previous existence are fragmented, like shards of glass that cut deeper the more I try to piece them together. I recall soft melodies, the scent of jasmine, and a profound sense of purpose. But here, in this rugged, unforgiving world, those memories feel like whispers from a forgotten dream. "You're brooding again," a voice interrupts my thoughts. I look up to see Maria, the only person in this new life who seems to sense the turmoil beneath my surface. She's a petite woman, with dark, expressive eyes, and a mane of curly black hair that's always threatening to escape her worn cowboy hat. Maria works as a veterinarian for the rodeo circuit. her gentle touch and sharp mind a stark contrast to the roughness that surrounds us. "Just thinking," I reply, offering a small, tired smile. She raises an eyebrow, leaning against the trailer's railing. "You think more than any cowboy I've ever met?" I chuckle softly, taking another sip of my coffee. Maybe that's because I'm not like other cowboys. Maria's gaze lingers on me, a hint of curiosity and something else I can't quite decipher glinting in her eyes. Before she can respond, a commotion erupts from the stables nearby, a chorus of frantic neighs and shouts. "Damn it, not again," Maria mutters, already moving towards the noise. I follow her instinctively, my body moving with a grace and purpose that feels both strange and innate. As we approach, I see a group of handlers struggling to calm a massive black stallion, its eyes wild and nostrils flaring. The horse rears back, nearly breaking free from the ropes attempting to hold it in place. "That's Midnight," Maria says, concern evident in her voice. "He's been restless all day." Without thinking, I step forward, my movements slow and deliberate. The handlers glance at me, hesitation evident. "Careful, Caleb." "He's spooked bad," one of them warns. I ignore the caution, focusing entirely on the distressed animal before me. As I approach, a strange sensation washes over me, a warmth spreading from my chest, down through my arms and into my fingertips. I raise a hand slowly, palm open, and whisper words I don't fully understand, the syllables flowing like a gentle melody from my lips. Midnight's ears perk up, his wild eyes locking onto mine. The tension in his muscles eases, and he lowers his head slightly, allowing me to place a hand gently against his muzzle. The world seems to hold its breath as the massive horse exhales softly, leaning into my touch. A murmur ripples through the gathered crowd, a mix of awe and disbelief. Maria approaches cautiously, her eyes wide. "How did you do that?" I pull my hand back slowly, the warmth fading as quickly as it had come. I don't know." She studies me intently, her gaze searching. "That's not the first time you've calmed an animal like that. I've seen you do it before, but this was different. Almost like magic?" I finish for her, the word hanging heavily between us. She doesn't respond immediately, but her silence speaks volumes. In this world of grit and muscle, magic is the stuff of fairy tales and folklore, not something witnessed in dusty rodeo backlots. Before either of us can say more, the rodeo manager storms over, his face flushed with anger. "What the hell's going on here? We got a show to run, and I can't have my best stallion losing his mind." Maria steps forward, her professional demeanor snapping into place. "It's okay, Joe. Midnight just got spooked, but he's calm now. We'll keep an eye on him." Joe grunts, eyeing me suspiciously before turning on his heel and barking orders at the remaining handlers. As the crowd disperses, Maria turns back to me, her expression a mix of concern and intrigue. We need to talk. Later that evening, we sit inside my modest trailer, the space cramped but cozy. The soft glow of a lantern casts flickering shadows across the walls, illuminating the stacks of books and journals I have collected over the past months. Titles on dream interpretation, metaphysics, and folklore spill from every surface. A desperate attempt to understand the unexplainable. Maria picks up one of the books, reading the title aloud. Bridging Worlds, The Veil Between Realms. You've been busy. I run a hand through my hair, exhaling slowly. Trying to make sense of things. She sets the book down gently, her gaze piercing. Caleb? Or whoever you are, what's going on? I hesitate, the urge to confide in her battling against the fear of sounding insane. But something in her steady gaze and the warmth of her presence encourages me to speak. I don't belong here, I begin slowly, choosing each word with care. 3 months ago, I woke up in this body with no memory of who I was before. Just fragments, images, sensations, emotions that don't fit with this life. And then there are moments, like today, when something inside me takes over. Something I can't explain. Maria listens intently, her expression thoughtful. Do you think you came from somewhere else? Like another life? Maybe, I reply, my voice barely above a whisper. Or another world entirely. She doesn't laugh or scoff, instead nodding slowly. I believe you. There are things in this world we can't explain, things that defy logic. But if you're right, then why are you here? What's the connection? That's the question that haunts me, the one I can't shake no matter how hard I try. Why am I here? What purpose could a person like me, in a body like this, possibly serve in a world so far removed from anything I knew? Before I can attempt an answer, a soft knock on the trailer door interrupts us. Maria rises to open it, revealing an elderly woman standing on the steps, her frame small and frail, yet exuding an undeniable presence. Her silver hair is tied back in a loose braid, and her eyes, sharp and knowing, seem to pierce right through me. Good evening, Maria. Caleb, she greets us, her voice smooth as silk, yet carrying the weight of ages. Miss Dolores, Maria says, surprise evident in her tone. What brings you here? Dolores steps inside, her movements slow but deliberate. She doesn't answer Maria's question, her gaze fixed on me. I've been waiting for you to find me, Caleb. Or should I say, for you to remember. My heart skips a beat, and for a moment the trailer seems to shrink around me, the air thick with anticipation. What do you mean? I ask, my voice strained. Dolores smiles. A sad, knowing smile that only deepens the mystery. You're not just lost, Caleb. You're cursed. And the only way to break that curse is to reclaim what was taken from you. But first, you must face the truth of who you are, and who you were. The words hang in the air like a heavy fog, their implications both terrifying and tantalizing. Who was I? I whisper, barely daring to hope for an answer. Dolores steps closer, placing a weathered hand on my shoulder. You were a healer, a guide between worlds. But something went wrong. Your power was stolen, your essence cast into this life, trapped in a body that was never meant to be yours. The only way to set things right is to reclaim that power, but doing so will require facing the darkness that took it from you. Her words resonate deep within me, striking a chord of recognition I can't fully grasp. The fragments of memories swirl in my mind, pieces of a puzzle that have eluded me for so long. What do I need to do? I ask, my voice steady with newfound resolve. Dolores's grip tightens, her gaze piercing into mine. You must return to where it all began. There, in the heart of the storm, you will find the answers you seek. A sense of foreboding settles over me, but with it comes a glimmer of hope. The road ahead will be treacherous, but it's the only a path that might lead me back to who I truly am. Maria watches silently, her expression a mix of concern and determination. We'll help you, she says firmly, her voice breaking through the tension. Whatever it takes. I nod, gratitude swelling in my chest. Thank you. As the night deepens, the three of us sit together, preparing for the journey ahead. In the distance, the wind howls through the desert, a haunting reminder of the forces at play. The road will be long, the challenge is great. But for the first time since waking in this life, I feel a sense of purpose. A purpose that, no matter the cost, I am determined to fulfill. For within me lies the power to heal, to bridge worlds, and to reclaim the life that was stolen. And, with that power, perhaps, to break the curse that binds me. I